with another edition of The Exchange. Today is Monday, April 27th. I'm joined with Blake Doyle virtually once again. How are you today, Blake?
I'm great. Yeah, another good day. Cold today, but great weekend, so all's well.
You're a little bit of a weatherman too, I guess.
We got to adapt to anything. Grass cutting, whatever it takes. Yeah, we are transforming the organization into.
Whatever you can to pivot. So it's been probably 4 days since our last one or so, I guess Thursday. Nothing really too extravagant happened, but one thing that did happen is both Saskatchewan and New Brunswick kind of announced their kind of tiered plan as to what they're going to do in terms of opening up or reopening the economy. So I don't know if you really touched on that much or had any chance to research that.
Yeah, and Georgia, of course, is fully operational, maybe against the advice of some. And Sweden never closed down. But if you look at New Brunswick, the premier had an interesting comment that that will be the same when things open up here, and we're probably not too far behind in that trajectory. He's concerned about the disincentive for people to re-engage in the labor market and what that means for companies that are trying to reopen when perhaps their employee base doesn't want to or isn't ready to go back or don't feel safe, whatever the reason is. So I think that's a concern. It's going to be a concern here, and I do think that things are on a path to slowly restarting. Problem is, not everything will restart, and even at this point, some businesses just won't return.
Yeah, and I watched on, it might have been the National or something. There was a labor relations lawyer just talking about how employers can incentivize people that are basically making more now through CERB than they ever were. Obviously, there's different tax implications, but that they're essentially at the gross amount, they're making more than they were working
Mm.
their minimum wage to maybe even a little more than minimum wage. And they were kind of discussing how would you incentivize it, and the only way is to pay people more or to provide a value in what they're doing in their job, whatever industry that may be. But that's going to be the biggest difficulty is, like you said, re-engaging because it's not that it's free money because it's giving it to everybody. It's fairly distributed, but on the cusp, it is free money that they can sit at home and watch Netflix and still get the same amount they would be working 8 hours a day.
Especially as the weather breaks and it gets more comfortable to be enjoying the solitude. I think the policy was it was swift, and that's important. I have said this a few times. The stimulation is at the wrong end of the economic um, quadrant. I mean, we're not stimulating demand. We're stimulating individuals, which is fine to a point. But turning that spigot off or redirecting it now is going to be very, very difficult, especially as provinces are starting to reopen. They have to. We're into our summer tourism season here, agriculture, fisheries, tourism. If we can't find people, we'll stall. And will people even come? I mean, noticed some comments recently about the potential for reopening the tourism industry and how people locally are reacting to that. So there's a lot of dimensions to restarting an economy, and it's only been closed, 6 weeks now?
Yeah, and like fully closed for let's say 4.5 because the first little bit it was kind of a gray area of what to do and what not to do. But yeah, now it's been fully closed for well over a month, and we're going on our 6th week now. The comments I saw just on it kind of pissed me off in a sense, but comments around I can't wait for a tourist-free summer. And my initial thought was like, okay, yeah, that's great, but a lot of people don't realize the economic spin-off from the tourist, like a busy tourism, and that's what we're able to fund our social programs, our education, everything that the government funds. It's a lot of it's through the backbone of our economy, which is small business, and many of those are through tourism. So if a lot of these aren't able to open this summer and maybe never open again, that's a lot of different jobs for people, different economic spin-offs, whether that be, let's say a tourist comes from, I don't know, the States somewhere, stops at the bridge, stops in Borden, picks up some stuff there, goes to their cottage, goes to Sandspit, goes to Richards in Cove Head. All these different spin-offs, people don't really see the tax implications and like how it'll benefit our entire society as a whole. And that kind of frustrated me because people, yeah, it's great that we don't have as many tourists, but the economic disaster that will occur if we don't have these tourists is far greater than having the beach to yourself one day.
And I've talked to retailers and restaurateurs that really are questioning if there's any value to reopen, and will traffic return, and how does a social distancing restaurant operate, and does it make sense to even attempt that at this stage? where people have been bleeding money now for a number of weeks. Even the finance minister this week acknowledged that there's going to be a deficit. The first time in a number of years, actually, we've been in a pretty good trajectory, and that's unavoidable. The question is, what's the magnitude? And I don't think that's even contemplated yet. The deficit numbers, the per capita debt, provincially, federally, is going to be shocking, just shocking,
crippling. That's why I'm saying once we can have the kind of tourist influx, we need that to happen, because that'll help pay off a lot of this debt. But people that want to have a summer for their own, I guess they don't care about that. Another argument that all this has caused is kind of like the argument towards universal basic income. And I've always kind of been against it due to the fact that what's happening now, like people are getting too comfortable. Sure, there's some people who actually need the kind of this benefit, but there's a lot of people who just want to be able to, I don't know, stay at home, and not to say anything bad about them, but there's pros and cons. There's a lot more pros than cons to an active workforce. And this, even Trudeau said the other day that this is in no way a test for universal basic income. There's still research to be done, but there has been lots and lots of research.
Yeah.
I just can't see a way to pull the trigger on that for the long term.
I think it is a social experiment, like it or not. That's what we have. We've experimented with it. It's been adopted. It's almost an entitlement. I don't know how you turn that off. Big question is, how do you afford it? But the underlying element of this is, how does this fundamentally transform capitalism, maybe even democracy? And you see people like Leon Cooperman talking about the fact that capitalism is going to be forever changed as a consequence of this. Government have given a lot of money to businesses, and with people taking that money, you can expect some governance and some oversight, and that's appropriate. So you take the money in one hand, but be prepared to be a little bit more pressure maybe from government. So, the fundamental underpinnings of capitalism, I think, are going to be challenged. I'm not sure what we're going to look like in 5 years. Won't be like what we looked like 5 months ago.
No, not at all. And I think my biggest argument against the kind of social experiment, or the universal basic income in general, is it would make more sense to, like, in my opinion, to pay the employers more to top up wages than to give people a set number every month to stay at home. Like, if people work a certain amount of hours and they get a certain amount more money, I don't know what that fine line would be, but if government could fund that instead of funding an entire paycheck, it just makes a lot more sense, in my opinion.
Agreed. Now, you had some thoughts and comments, actually published an article about how governments manage crisis, and anything you want to sort of observe from your
So I got some
research.
good feedback on it. I guess some people disagreed with my statement that Trump will get reelected, but we'll see in November. The biggest thing that
he might be killing off his base. There may be nobody left.
Yeah, there might be. If George is open, yeah, you're right. The biggest thing is that governments, yes, it's a dangerous time. Yes, it's scary, but governments who want maybe a political future should take advantage of it while they can, because there is a lot of positive sides politically to it, and also opportunity that things governments might have never explored. So offering free money to, not free money, it's obviously it's investment, but free money to different sectors, different industries that can help them kind of pivot and adapt. And we're seeing it, a lot of different businesses shifting completely to e-commerce, or just hiring someone to help them make the pivot. And that's what we're seeing now. Like, a lot of different breweries, we often talk about breweries because I guess it's kind of like the buzzword through our economy, but different, like, they're delivering beer straight to your door, and you're going from free deliveries to eventually it'll be e-commerce, that UPS or Amazon or whoever will, not Amazon, but a similar service will drop it off right to your door, and you can have a 6-pack like that. So I think that's, a lot of places are pivoting towards e-commerce, and that'll be the new norm going forward into our economy.
Touchless delivery. So we might get beer dropped by drones. Nobody has to touch it, pre-order and pay, and it just gets dumped on your doorstep.
It's all an experiment through this, because it's never happened before. And I hate using the word unprecedented times because it's been so overused, but it's true. It's kind of survival of the innovator through it. It's not survival of the fittest, it's survival of the innovator. Who's willing to change their approach? Who's willing to try new things to create a sustainable business practice?
So those that were well positioned before this are accelerating. You look at the stocks, even stock prices of Amazon and Costco and Walmart, they're accelerating because they had the infrastructure to adapt. The issue is the local guys, they're further crippled. The same thing happened when Walmart came to town and crippled them. Now this is a whole other exponential threat, which is electronic management, ordering, delivery in hours when the local guys aren't even open to try to serve that space. So, we've got retailers, if you take clothing industry, that never cleared their winter inventory. When they come back and look at their shelves, they still have probably coats and hats on the
Mm-hmm.
shelves. Their summer stuff's probably there in boxes. They'll probably miss the entire summer season, which they should be selling through right now. So, I don't know how people get through this crippling impact. It's not going to be possible for many businesses.
Yeah.
Some won't want to.
And it's a correction, like it's a forced correction. Obviously, we don't want to see businesses like kind of plummet, but the ones that aren't ready are too stuck in their ways, the old-fashioned kind of way of doing business. It's not going to work. I was going to ask, would True Valley Hardware be open during all this if it were still
Of
open?
course, yeah. So it's essential service. It might be just me peddling electric tape and paint, but and those businesses, there's a few local examples. Even Canadian Tire's got curbside pickup, which they never had before. So companies have adapted. When you drive by the parking lots, clearly people still want to go in. The grocery stores, the hardware stores, they're busy, too busy, I believe. But there are other options. But these are bigger corporations that have the infrastructure to invest and support that. I was by Buns and Kings in the weekend, where you can place an order, pick it up the next day. So the local guys are adapting, but they've got an uphill challenge.
And like you said, they didn't really think about what could happen like this, but whereas Amazon and the big players have been
They're
prepared
there.
for months and
Yeah.
months, but it just took something like this to speed up the process that they've been believing in for the past number of years.
Yeah. It's going to crush many companies, which is unjustified. Anyway, we talked about that a bit in some articles as far as providing the infrastructure for local companies to better compete, a centralized portal, a distribution process using local courier services. So the infrastructure is available. It's just not being reined and coordinated and managed.
I agree. And we haven't even touched on our interview today with, I guess it would have been a couple months ago now that we actually interviewed him, but due to everything that's been going on, we haven't really found the right time to slot him in. But he is someone who is kind of being definitely affected by whatever's happening on as Dan Kutcher of South Central Kitchen in Summerside. So you're pretty
Yeah,
close to Dan in terms of,
yeah,
I guess,
only
business and
because
a friendship side.
yeah,
But
we have we have an office in Summerside, had for many years, and there's not too many times I'd be in Summerside I wouldn't stop for a sandwich. So yeah, really strengthened that rapport. He's a former president of the Summerside Chamber, of which I'm involved, but just a great guy. And as we go through this conversation, we did record it a long time ago, get hit with the pandemic, and we've been pending. We have a few people record it that we just haven't gotten released yet. This is one of those ones, but a great advocate for Summerside. Um, Pretty innovative too. I mean, he's an early adopter of a lot of things, not least of which is electrification of vehicles. So he's got a lot of neat things to say, and somebody that I think we should all be watching into the future.
I think
Great restaurant too.
from my perspective, he was fairly political active too, and he worked as a staffer in past governments in Parliament Hill. So kind of to go from doing that for so long and kind of being committed to that to go into law. He became a lawyer and then said, no, enough of that. And now he's an entrepreneur. So yeah, he definitely has a lot of cool perspectives on. This was when everything was going well and the economy was booming, so quote unquote. But I'm sure, and he's been kind of adamant on social media about taking the right procedures to flatten the curve and just kind of making sure that the economy does stay shut. So if people do follow him on Facebook or Twitter or whatever the case may be, you will see that Dan is very pro shutting down or keeping the economy closed until people are healthy.
It should, lots changed. And I don't know, it must be 2 months since we chatted first. Be good to get a follow up,
See
quick
what he says
snippet as
afterwards.
well. Yeah, because sure, maintaining the curve is good, but we have done that. And as soon as you release people to the wild, the curve is going to spike again. Other communities have accepted that. I think what you'll see here is a relaxation. The curve will go up, they'll close down. And I think we're going to go through a couple of these cycles of relaxation, closure, and it's going to be difficult on businesses, but it's the only way to maintain the health system. So I think that's what we're looking at the next 24 months.
Definitely. Well, we'll turn it over to our interview with Dan now. You don't have to look at our faces anymore. And we will talk to you later.
Welcome everybody, we're back at the Exchange. I'm here with Sam McPhail. We've got a special guest representing Summerside today, Dan Kutcher. And Dan is, your last name doesn't sound like a name from the Summerside community. You from this area?
No, not originally, Blake and Sam. Thanks for having me here too.
Right into the hard
yeah,
punching.
Yeah, there's no gentle
Don't wanna-
segue. It's like-
Easy. No, your name. Good save
You
the
caught
top
me at your
ones for
name.
later. No, Blake. Very observant of you. Kutcher's not,
Not a
an
local-
island name.
Okay.
No,
any
it's
relation
not.
to any relation to Ashton Kutcher?
Not that I speak
Oh.
about
No,
Okay.
okay.
publicly.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I
Okay.
don't want people asking me.
Have you met Danny Moore?
No,
Okay.
none of that. No, I guess Kutcher would have been it's a Ukrainian name, so my family came over on my father's side post World War II as the Sipowiches and Kutchers.
Okay.
Those are the two names. And my mom's family was Empire Loyalists, so
Okay. It's a good
there
combination.
you go.
Yeah. Here you are on the East
Yeah,
Coast.
here we are on the East Coast. Yeah.
So what
Yeah.
would bring you to the East Coast of Canada? Not this is a great place to be, but if you're from a bigger center, what would attract you?
Sure.
to
Well,
this
like
place?
I moved to Nova Scotia with my family when I was 16 or 17, somewhere in there. So I spent some time in Nova Scotia, at least in the East Coast. Did my undergraduate degree at Acadia, again Nova Scotia. Back to Ontario for 7 years. Back to Nova Scotia for Dow Law, Newfoundland. After that, chased my wife there, and then
Followed her. To,
here we are. I followed her here to PI. Well, we came together. It was a mutual. PI was a mutual decision.
And a good
It was a good one. Yeah, it wasn't on the. To be honest, it wasn't like the top of my list. At least Summerside. When I moved to St. John's, with April, I told her this is the smallest place I'll ever live. Just a little. Set the boundaries.
Yeah.
And then I lost. And so when she completed a residency, she was looking for work opportunities. We wanted to stay close. Her family's in Nova Scotia. My family's mostly in Nova Scotia there in Ontario. We wanted to stay on the East Coast, and Summerside was hiring a pediatrician. And so I said no.
You lost.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I said no, and I've never heard of it. I've probably been here when I was a kid. We come to the island and
Yeah.
stuff for the summer. So then Health PEI enticed us with a trip to Summerside in August,
Yeah.
leaving Newfoundland, which was
Still
I
icebergs.
was sure, fine.
Get me
I
out of here.
Love Newfoundland, love St. John's. If everything had worked out, we'd probably still be there. And if April's work had still worked out there. And we showed up, and that was it. We had decided that by the end of the weekend,
This is.
I'd flipped.
Oh.
I was pro Summerside.
Easy
in
sell.
3 days. I came in, I found the baker and the butcher shop and a great coffee shop, and we found the house that we lived in. And she'd go to the hospital, take her 3 minutes to get to work, and I'd take the kids to the beach. And I thought, okay, this is good. This
Good
is good. I
trade-off.
could do this. So we did. So we moved to Summerside. That was it.
So you mentioned you did law school. Now I know you as a baker because you've got probably some of the best food that I've had. Really,
This side of Water Street for
this
sure.
side of Water Street, no question. But it's great restaurants.
We're
South
on the
Central.
wrong side. Of
So
Water
for those,
Street.
yeah,
Right
for
now
those who
we're
don't
on
know,
the
I
wrong
guess
side.
Dan is the owner of South Central. Is it on Central Street? I guess that would
It
make
is on
sense.
Central Street, yeah, the south.
The south part of Central
Yeah.
Street would probably be some of the best sandwiches and breads you'd ever eat.
For sure, the best sourdough. So I want to know how you went from a law firm
Yep.
to an entrepreneur, but a restaurateur.
Yeah,
All
it'll be,
things.
it'll be third career. My first career was in politics. 7 years of that.
I understand why you left that.
Yeah, that
Go
was-
back to that one. That's good.
Yeah, I was done. I was tired of winning.
Okay, well, it does get boring, I suspect.
But I got moved to Atlantic, Canada, and I got back to losing again. So anyway, yeah, I practiced law for 6 years. I practiced primarily in food and beverage sector on the commercial side.
Yeah.
Very different practice in St. John's in Newfoundland, where I started my practice, much more institutional, large clients, and then moved here to Summerside, and it's just a smaller retail law practice. Both were rewarding in different ways, but at the end of the day, for me, practicing law, it just didn't turn out to be exactly where I wanted to go, and I had an opportunity popped up. So a friend of mine, I always wanted to get into business at some point, so it was more a question of what and when.
What time, yeah.
And when I sort of generate the confidence to be able to do that. To be honest, I probably should have done it when I was 21 and just never gone to school and just opened a business and got started. But it took me another 20 years to get around to it.
Discipline to have the law background.
It's not bad, yeah. It's not bad. It's not
You carry that
bad.
with you.
I suppose you carry with
Yeah.
you. Yeah, when we do a purchase and sale, we go to rent a purchase and sale, and machine or something, and I read the agreement, and everyone's always shocked. Like, oh, no one ever
Nobody
reads
reads
that.
this,
It's like, well, I do.
That's what I did for 6 years. Yeah.
So I'd rather read them and implement them in my own business than write them, which is just horrible to do. It's so boring.
It's a certain kind of person.
Yeah,
I guess,
it's true. Yeah,
versus if you have your kind of mind is probably of the entrepreneurial sense, especially if you were working in politics, you're always going, so you need that. You can't sit in an office for 8 hours and say, oh well, I did work today, now it's time to go home. Like,
you like the strategy and the
you always,
intellectual
exactly.
debate, but it is a good exercise to sit down and to do something pen to paper for hours and hours working out language and terms and conditions. For me, it just didn't work out. So, but what happened? A friend of mine from high school was a chef. He quit his job. He had a bunch of money, he'd saved up, he decided to quit his job. He moved to Italy to go learn Italian. And
And he's a partner now today?
he is now a partner, yeah. So anyway, he was in Italy, we keep in touch, and so he'd send me emails periodically, and one day he sent me an email and said, I'm in wherever he was, at some Italian school, and he's like, oh, there was an earthquake, it's great, what a party. My Argentinian friends and I were cooking steaks on the street, everybody's outside, this is hilarious, what a great time we're having. And then 3 hours later, he sent me another email that said, there were more earthquakes, the school started to fall down, we've all been evacuated, all I have is my hoodie and this hard hat, and I don't have a passport. Can you call our friend in Rome, because I'm going to have to, I don't know what to do. So I took the opportunity to suggest that this, where he was living was gone, and no one was killed, fortunately, in that earthquake, but yeah, and so I said, well, you come to BI, I'm open a restaurant. He went to culinary school here.
Okay.
And so we did. He showed up. He was like, all right, let's take a look. And we looked at what we were going to do.
So you've patriated a few people to Summerside region. I understand you've got some family members here. You say you brought partners to the restaurant.
Yeah.
So you're an advocate for the city. And I've seen in the course of the last few years some explosive things happening. Great infrastructure investment from the Cup right through to some of the facilities as far as even accommodations. What do you see happening in Summerside? You've been here now for a few years, so describe how you've seen the culture and the community and the economy kind of transform, and then what you see kind of happening in the future.
Yeah, so I'll start back a little bit from when I first got here. So I grew up as a kid. We moved around a lot. We ended up in a whole bunch of different places all over the world. So I had a lot of experience showing up in places and having a new set of eyes on it. So I've always been interested in that and trying to maintain that, because you stay somewhere for a period of time and it's hard to see something new, and I think it's important. So when we first came to Summerside, what I saw was opportunity. That's how I viewed this community. Just from my initial view of it, I thought, okay, there's some assets here. Some of the assets I think are a little disjointed. Summerside's got some really great things going for it, and it's got some few things that it could do better long term. So I was encouraged by that, and that was one of the reasons why we ended up making the move, because I thought, okay, this is the kind of place where we can do some things.
You can almost build some up on your own because there is that small market feel.
Yeah, and there's a way to do that and then still be able to maintain a good family balance, and we've got young kids, and 2 doors away from a daycare, and the schools are great. So like all those things sort of coalesced. And so what I've sort of seen since we got here as well is it's been, I don't know if it's been meteoric, I don't know, probably word.
Close enough.
Yeah, once you get over 7 letters, my pronunciation
slur your words.
Yeah, it's not in slurring, I just don't know how to pronounce the word. I couldn't see it in my mind. Yeah, too many. Is that there's been a lot of growth in the small business sector here. There's 2 anchors in Summerside, and that is a good thing and a bad thing. Is you got to be careful. It's Standard Aero, formerly Vector, and the Tax Center. And those are 2 anchors that provide good paying year-round jobs that are sustainable and help people develop skills in both ways. One's bureaucratic, one's really technical, but they're both really important in this community. And so, like I said, there's some the positives are obvious. You've probably got 1,000 people employed in just those two locations. And then you always have the heightened concern, because if anything were to happen with either one of those, especially with the aerospace sector, it can move around. Now, I know they're very well anchored here, which is great. So it's always something to be careful of and cognizant of. And I think Summerside, although I wasn't here, is aware of that and pays attention to that, just given the change that happened in 20, whatever it would be now, years ago with their base.
But they've diversified a bit, so there's a few other companies within that sector.
There are, yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah, they spin off, exactly. Yeah, you have some more support.
And has that been the fuel for some of the small business growth?
I'm not sure it's one or the other. In my opinion, at least, in terms of small business growth, what I think people have seen is the same thing I saw 6 years ago, was that there's an opportunity here. You still have, you have a set number of people that live here, and you have a city that has a number of businesses and operations and services that have been around for a long time, but you also have some that just didn't exist before. And I think people are starting to fill those gaps. I think you start to see that more with some younger entrepreneurs opening up shop here. And Summerside at its core is really a small business place, and it's a place where people don't just do business with each other and transact. You give me some service and I'll give you some money, or vice versa. But the relationships really matter here. And so I think the people have gotten into business here, and now sort of in the last number of years there have been a few more risk takers or chance getters or whatever you want to call it. And people have gone and done it. I don't know if it's one thing or the other. I think it's maybe just a bit of a sense of the opportunity. I think once people get an idea that there's an opportunity, yes, I can do this, someone does it, and there were a couple leaders and a couple, they're successful, and then other people see it. So, even in our sector, which is a restaurant and food services sector, I think when I moved here, I remember one of the first days I moved here, I went to Charlottetown because I did my political stuff, so I knew the premier at the time. We worked together years ago. And I went up and chatted with him, and he's like, I remember him saying, he's like, oh, there's nowhere to eat in Summerside.
That's a complaint I've heard.
Right away.
Where else do you go?
Yeah, and that was the Charlottetown viewpoint from the premier at the time. Then the premier's chief of staff and I went out after that, and he told me that in 2 years I'd live in Charlottetown. That would certainly be the case. Anyway, we didn't. We never moved.
Beat the odds.
Yeah, we beat the odds.
We
have to go there for basketball tournaments and stuff sometimes. But so eventually open the restaurant, right? But yeah, so I think that's just people sort of sensing the opportunity and going for it. And I think when you get a few people at the front end, like I said, in the restaurant business, you've got the Monas, the Samuels, and then Alex Clark with the Open Eats. People always said you can't do a high-end restaurant in Summerside, and I think they both showed that it's really successful, and that he's moved on to the brewery. And I really think that those types of businesses help inspire others and create a little bit of confidence. And they create traffic in the downtown. And once you create traffic, basic Jane Jacobs stuff, right? Once you create foot traffic and people coming and going, others will continue to follow that opportunity. So, yeah, I think it's been good, and I think that some of the bigger projects too. I think the past mayor and then the current mayor and council, at least, really put a lot of attention into economic development and started to rethink what economic development means and how you go about doing it. And I think there's been maybe not enough attention paid on developing small business here and leveraging some of the assets, but
it's probably the same in most places.
Yeah.
In Charlottetown, you'd say the same thing, but
yeah, that's the big fish, small fish.
People always
argument
chase the
where
big.
yeah, they chase the big fish, and some people think that that's a good idea and some don't, but I fall into the latter camp. But
it's probably 85%. I don't know what the stat is, but there's a lot. The majority of the businesses would be small business when you look at the impact to GDP.
Yeah, and especially in sustained jobs too, right?
Like you said about the two main pillars, like with Standard and the tech center, like only one's a business, and that's such a big fish that the other one's kind of the multiplication factor for the small businesses of that big business is pretty big.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and Standard has got there are other I don't know how long-term successful the sort of aerospace strategy was in PEI, but they're grounded. They've got good employees. They do a good job. I don't know how much I can disclose what I know about them, but they are really competitive. That facility is really good, and they've been really successful, and that's an important piece of the city.
So going forward, I think from what I see from the outside, and Sam, you're from the Charlottetown area, course, I'm
Cornwall. Let's not. No, don't loop me in with you guys.
We want to be part of the Summerside.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure.
But I think the growth going forward, from what I've seen transform in the last few years, I'm pretty excited about what Summerside has to look forward to in the next 5 years. Are you seeing any big changes?
Yeah, I think so. You know, it's hard when I served the chamber president there for a couple of years, and so when you're there, you're watching out more, and then when you do that, and even as a lawyer, you're watching out that both from a business standpoint because you're looking for developing clients as a commercial lawyer, and then when you're running a business, you're much more head down. How are we going to make this work?
Right.
But yeah, I have seen that, and I've seen a real more of an entrepreneurial spirit in the community.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's like you said. It only takes one. If one can do it, the other person will say, "Well, I can do that. Like, why don't I take a plunge and do the same thing?"
Yeah, and I think that where it's happening are kind of in more interest, from my perspective at least, more interesting
industries type.
Yeah, and then it's the
diversity.
Yeah, and you get different kinds of places, and again, you get places that you kind of want to go and shop and frequent, and I'm seeing that a lot, and I think they go sort of hand in hand, the bigger development and the bigger attraction, and also that small business piece. Now, Summerside's interesting because really the top, I'll call it top side of the city, sort of north side of the city, is really, its market is a lot bigger than Summerside because it's the hub basically from Summerside west, right? That's the Walmart, that's where the car stores are, that's where the big superstores are, and
that's where you get your McFlurry.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of people in Cavendish in the summertime come to sort of pick up their stuff to take back
to go camping or whatever.
Yeah, to go camping and that kind of thing. And so that's a different dynamic in the city. You get a lot of in and out, but at the same time, that's helped sustain a lot of the rest of the businesses and help feed them. So
that's an interesting point. So you started. Against conventional wisdom, you started a small business in the downtown core. The downtown has traditionally been kind of quiet compared to what's going on in the Granville area. All the traffic funnels from the west down into that north end of the city. How do you attract? Do you see the vibrancy rebirthing down in the?
I hope so, Blake. I hope so. I have seen it, and it's been slow. I have seen it since I've moved here. For us, when we opened, there was never any question, and maybe I sort of take my community hat and wear it too much from a business perspective. From a business perspective, it might have been smarter to not be downtown, but for me, I really think that going back to that initial, when you go somewhere new, how do you look at something new for the first time over and over and over again? And for me, Summerside, the downtown was missing when I got here, and that was part of the opportunity. But really, I try and measure the health and vibrancy of a community based on the health and vibrancy of the downtown. And downtowns have transitioned over the past 30 or 40 years from places where you go shop for stuff that you need to places that you go shop for stuff that you want. I see them as more service and entertainment hubs than. If you need to go buy your groceries, for the most part, you're just going to go to your big grocery store. But for the specialty stuff, you'll go downtown. Or if you want to go get someone a birthday gift that's kind of interesting or unique, you go to the downtown. You go get a coffee, and then you go stop in the shop, and you go get a haircut. And you go. It's an experience, so experiential. I think we've got a wonderful downtown here. So I've seen that growth happen, and I've seen a lot of the growth, especially those new businesses that I'm talking about from the small business perspective, setting up downtown, which is great. It's not enough yet, but that's where it's going.
There's a strong nucleus.
There is,
so,
yeah.
And we're in the Holman building right now. There's a great farmer's market here on the weekends.
Yep.
You mentioned Alex and the stuff that he's doing. You've got a brewery. Sean with his barber shop is pretty unique entrepreneur.
Yeah, I started to sort of connect some of the dots
Yep.
in Summerside's downtown, and you have even in the summertime with the whatever it is, the inflatable water playground down there. The off the wall stuff. It's really good, and they're starting to sort of, like I said, sort of connect some of those dots or fill some of those gaps. But really, what you need to have successive places that you want to visit or pass by or window shop.
Spend some time.
Yeah, and spend some time.
dollars.
And we're in the Holman building, and for years this Holman building, for me at least, has been a bit of a source of frustration because you've got, if you count it, 96 steps or something. Right on Water Street with frosted windows at the backs of people working in the Department of Education with the second floor that's half empty. So for me, that's always been a big issue. I've advocated that for a long time that should be turned into retail and commercial space. Right because you create, again, it's Jane Jacobs 101, don't create dead space in your downtown. Because if you have dead space, people aren't going to walk through it. People then don't feel as safe to go through it. There's nothing to go to, and you cut it off. So I still think there's a lot of opportunity here too as well. Because I sort of look around, I'm like, okay, there's still growth. Even Alex and the brewery, which has been fantastic. Yeah. That part of that is Alex, but part of that too was the Summerside Rotary Club.
Right.
Who decided to move that building to whatever that government building was before, and they built a fantastic library with some really great leadership in the community.
Yep.
And then the other pieces followed from that. Then the city made sure, sold that building to Alex, and Alex built the brewery there, and so we started to fill in these gaps. And then we get two really great things, and we go from one older library to two really vibrant pieces of the community that you can walk between. So yeah, I think that's really good.
Giant residences behind them now. The Arsenault brothers are putting some massive units.
The port,
yeah, which is nice, more residential.
Yeah.
And you have a lot of. I saw this in practice of law. There's a transition. There's a lot of people leaving homes and moving into rental, into apartments.
Smaller, more easier to clean up.
Easier to clean and
heat
just
or whatever.
Easier cost to manage, more consistent cost to manage for boomers or retiring boomers. That kind of.
So we'll put Blake in there before his nursing home.
Right.
Sure, yeah, he's
not too far away.
Right.
I can walk to the restaurants.
There you go. Yeah.
So let's. You guys are both. I'm an observer of politics. You guys are both. What would I say? Active. At one point in your careers, you've been actively engaged in politics, and I guess I was at one point. What do you think politically? What can be done? What needs to be done? Is there any political energies that need to be applied to this community, or is it independent and doesn't really need to be bothered with the interferences of government?
A buzzword that they use a lot is collaboration, but I don't know if they actually practice it. They might not practice as much as they want to, but I think it does. It takes both sides. Like government has from the policy side, but then also like you said, the leadership to actually implement it. Whether that's the Rotary Club or the Chamber of Commerce or whatever the case may be. But I think like in terms of actual things that you have to grow the population if you want to grow the economy. So I think by allowing more, whether it's immigration or finding better ways to get people to Summerside so that you can grow that population, that will in turn and grow the economy, and buy more sandwiches at your shop or go to the brewery or go get their haircut or do whatever. They kind of influx the downtown core to drive the economy.
It's municipals, provincial.
Like
the economic development department, to their credit, have been punching a little bit above their weight, probably, and attracting some energy to the city. What do you think? You from a chamber perspective, from a political perspective, what does the city need to kind of really be the next catalyst like that?
Immigrants.
Yeah. Population.
Yeah, and immigrants are risk takers.
Willing to put the money in and stay or risk another couple of years to kind of make it work.
And really like if I can sort of park the economic immigrant class aside, which is one that's coming. One function, but that's already answering that question. I'm going to come and start a business. But other immigrants are here. If you just think about it, if somebody's decided to uproot their family from somewhere else in the world and take that risk, especially when they have kids or when their spouses are spending everything they have to take a chance to do something better, really not for themselves but for their children. That's how our family. My grandmother showed up with her family from Ukraine. They got off the train.
They had to make a go of it. There's no option.
There wasn't even. They came through Pier 21. They came on the ship. They got on the train. They took the train from Halifax to Toronto, thinking the entire time, where the hell is all this farmland that everybody's talking about? They're Ukrainian farmers. So where's the farmland? It's New Brunswick and Quebec.
Right.
I don't know if we can swear on this podcast.
Sure
There's
can,
fucking trees everywhere. There's no farmers. They end up in downtown Toronto. The train stops. Everyone gets off the train, and the train leaves. that was the that was the system, and so the church
That was the
there.
PNP of the time.
Yeah, and they had young kids, and so no one wanted to. The church came and tried to organize it, and they were like last in line in terms of place to go. So that's, and you know, they, for whatever, at a different time, but at the same time, people who are willing to take those risks or go through that are going to take. Geez, starting a business, that's like.
That's easy. I just left
Sure.
the country all across the world.
Exactly. And so that's really that sort of entrepreneurial spirit. I think there is a lot of value in the diversity. I think the diversity of ideas. You know, I always say something that totally contradicts what I always hear on politicians say is, oh, we want to keep all of our young people in PEI. And I always say, look, I've got young kids. I say, I don't want to keep young people in PEI. I want them to go. And people
Do
think
what they
that's
want. At least
crazy.
have the choice to do it.
I want them to come back.
Right.
But I want them to go.
Experience.
Do something else and come back. There's a lot of that sort of carrying those ideas that sort of it can do a lot for a place.
Yep.
And so we made, you know, I always say it as well, like you can't, some things in life you don't choose. You don't choose who your parents are. You don't choose who you fall in love with. You don't choose if you pay taxes. But you know, if you're fortunate enough, you can choose where you live and where you raise your family and what kind of work you want to do. And that's where I think that's what you want to attract in PEI. So yeah, I forget your original question. Politics
It
and
was politics, but you
Drive
mentioned
the economy.
population
That's
growth.
how you do it.
It's interesting. So you mentioned economic migration, which has been a real benefit, I think, to the western part of the province the last few years. Today, 88% of newcomers who come to PEI are actually labor class migrants. So it's a not well represented or recognized group. You know, in Summerside, I know there's people who've come for student visas. So you've got the student population in schools is growing because of students. There's a lot of different functions of immigration, and I think Summerside's grasping that and benefiting from it.
I think so, yeah, absolutely, and I think PEI has in general as well. Like they've seen the value of that.
Well, yeah, in terms of economic growth, it's all from immigration. If you compare the stats, it's literally like paralleled all the way through. And every report you read, it's you need population growth if you want to even do anything with the economy.
It's great, and it feels better. For me, it feels better because I'm more. It's sort of how I grew up in a really diverse community, and I've lived in places where I'm like the super minority, and I'm comfortable in that, and I think there's a lot of value in that, and I love people with different backgrounds and cultures, and so I think I just love it. So that's what I think we need more than anything.
And is Summerside ready to embrace that?
I think so.
That's
yeah.
a loaded question, but you know it's happening.
Yep.
And at first, it's a little bit uncomfortable for people. What I see is that they're embracing that. You've seen that as well. And
yeah, I have the whole time. You're always going to have the outliers, but I think what's really unique about Summerside in particular is it's sort of on this threshold for size where you kind of know everybody.
Yep.
And you know everything about everybody, which means you know nothing about anybody.
Right.
And everyone thinks they know what's going on, and no one actually has any idea
A lot of
what's
rumors.
going on. It's like this perfect separate degrees of separation to make sure that nobody knows anything.
Right.
So yeah, so it's just serious. There's a lot of rumors and stuff, which is always entertaining and fun. But what really makes it unique at the same time is that people are found in business in particular here in Summerside recognize the value of supporting the community. So it isn't just about me trying to make a bunch of money in a business when I'm making widgets. It's not just about selling a whole bunch of widgets. I've always been so impressed with the business community in particular here in Summerside. I'm impressed with all communities, but the business community, I was always so impressed with their ability to give back and work together. And you know, you see that every year at the
Cowboy boots.
everywhere. Yeah, Cowboy Boots is probably the biggest one project there, but you see it all over the place, and people here in Summerside do business with one another where they might save a buck or two if they do business with someone else.
Right.
But they still do business with one another because they support one another, and they know, geez, at the end of the day, probably, you know, my cousin's gonna go work at that place, so I'd rather have them stay and have a good paying job and work together. And so I've always found that really unique, and I think Summerside is really in that size where if it was too much larger, it's easier to it's easier to be anonymous, and the detachment and you don't need it as much. But I think here people realize in Summerside that you really are better here when we work together, and I think we're a lot stronger when we work together. That doesn't negate any kind of competition. I think competition's still out there and healthy. But I've always found that unique, and I noticed that right when I first moved here, and I've stuck with me ever since. So I think it's a really impressive piece of this community, and I think it's one of the things that attracts new entrepreneurs.
Right.
I think that really helps people grow. Like, when we even opened this place, the people we were going to be in direct competition with were incredibly supportive.
Right. And it grows the industry.
Yeah,
More
exactly.
people in
That
the
side,
city,
yeah. You just bring
people down.
You bring
to
people,
core.
yeah, exactly. You bring them down to core, and if you, now you're not going to go to place A, you go to place B, and two people can come down and go back and forth. Or, there's a real recognition of the value in sort of some of that kind of economic hub, but in the value of working together.
But I think that's a good place to end with our the most famous man on the southern end of Central Street, Dan Kutcher.
There's a lot of famous people on the south end of Central Street.
The best sandwich
No question. The best food.
The best food in
The best
town.
food.
We try hard. We got a good staff.
We always enjoy coming up. In fact, it's worth the drive to Summerside just to stop at South Central.
Oh, thanks, guys.
We take
Okay.
food orders up actually. So
We were supposed to get sourdough bread for one of the girls at the office, but you're closed today,
Yeah,
so
we're
we
closed.
can't.
Only open 4 days a week. It's a life-work balance.
There you go.
We've taken it to the extreme.
Well, we thank you very much
Thanks,
for
guys.
agreeing to meet with us, and I'm
Yeah.
sure you won't hear the end of us. We'll be
We'd
back
love
for
to
some
connect again.
food.
So,
Yeah, great. Yeah, you bet.
Thanks for your perspectives on Summerside. We'll be in touch again.
Thanks very much, guys.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Sam. Thanks, Blake.